izquierdo, saliendo por cualquiera de estas tres puertas que ya están debidamente habilitadas. Pueden ir ustedes a los baños. Tenemos unos baños exclusivos para estos salones cedros que va a ser acá. Y como norma de seguridad también, damas y caballeros, detrás de estas cortinas hay puertas que las mismas están abiertas y nos trasladan a un patio e inmediatamente estamos afuera en caso de una emergencia. También podemos evacuar por el lado izquierdo, hay una puerta que nos lleva directo al parqueo. Agradecerles su puntualidad. Melissa, ¿podemos iniciar? Muchísimas gracias, muchísimas gracias. Es un honor, y creo que un honor para ustedes también, estar aquí presente en el seminario, uno de los tantos e importantes que cada año, o se intenta hacer cada año, que es el Seminario Regional sobre Capacitación de Supervisores de Seguros de Latinoamérica, ASSAL y IAIS, que estaremos realizándolo hoy y mañana, miércoles. Es importante, creo que para ustedes, que están en esta área de seguros o de alguna manera unidos a este sector, la importancia de estar capacitándose y recibir la información debida de las personas que la saben. Quiero invitar a una persona que es, además de la cabeza de todo esto, un gran amigo, el señor Tomás Oley Pérez, quien pronto nos va a dirigir las palabras. Él es el Superintendente General de Seguros de la SUGESE. Él es economista y administrador de empresas, graduado por la Universidad de Costa Rica, con un posgrado en Economía por la Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile, en donde se graduó con honores, y un posgrado en Administración de Empresas por la Universidad Interamericana de Costa Rica. Fungió como asesor parlamentario y como coordinador del área de asesoría económica del Congreso hasta el 2001. A partir del 2001 y hasta el 2005, trabajó en la Superintendencia de Pensiones de Costa Rica, llamada SUPEN, como director de estudios especiales y valoración de riesgo, y a partir de 2005 asumió la dirección de planificación y normativa. Desde el 2008 y hasta octubre de 2012 ocupó el cargo de intendente en la SUGESE, y a partir del 6 de noviembre de 2012 funge como Superintendente General de Seguros. Actualmente es parte de la Asociación de Supervisores de Seguros de América Latina, ASSAL. Él es el presidente. En el campo docente, también don Tomás se ha desarrollado en diversas áreas de la economía en la Universidad de Costa Rica y ha participado como conferencista en foros nacionales e internacionales relacionados con el sistema financiero y los seguros. Quisiera invitar a don Tomás que se nos una por acá y que por favor nos dirija las palabras de bienvenida de este seminario.
Muy buenos días tengan todos ustedes. Es un placer dar inicio a este seminario que nos convoca nuevamente la Asociación de Supervisores de Seguros de América Latina, con el concurso siempre apoyo extraordinario de la IAIS. Nos acompaña Connor Donaldson también, el jefe de implementación de la IAIS, amigo estrecho, personal y además de esta superintendencia y de ASSAL. Este seminario nos permite seguir marcando una pauta de adopción de buenas prácticas en la región. Es uno de los eventos esperados al año por todos los países de Latinoamérica. Tenemos en esta ocasión 12 países de Latinoamérica que han venido a San José a compartir experiencias y a recibir también esta actualización sobre las mejores prácticas que se van adoptando a nivel mundial. Señalaba ayer tuvimos un encuentro muy interesante, un encuentro de alto nivel con el FSI, con la IAIS, en el cual se discutieron diversos tópicos y en ese momento conversábamos sobre los retos de Latinoamérica también. Latinoamérica tiene una agenda pendiente todavía en lo que es la agenda tradicional de los supervisores de seguros, en los enfoques de solvencia, de gobernanza corporativa, de gestión de riesgos. y de conducta de mercado. Pero enfrenta también riesgos emergentes que empiezan a aflorar y que empiezan a preocupar y a ocupar a los reguladores. Riesgos emergentes como son toda la innovación, todos los riesgos cibernéticos que empiezan a florecer, que son oportunidades importantísimas para generar reducciones en la brecha de protección. Latinoamérica, igual que el mundo, tiene una brecha de protección de seguros importante, y ahí encontramos retos, oportunidades extraordinarias, pero también preocupaciones del lado del regulador, y que hay que saber balancear a efecto de no matar la innovación, pero permitir esos procesos de inclusión financiera y de acceso al seguro que estamos tan necesitados. Y por otro lado, y en este evento, el primer panel lo hemos dedicado a ese tema, tenemos los retos también del desarrollo sostenible de cara al 2030. Retos que no son menores, que el país tiene su agenda, que Latinoamérica tiene su agenda en reducción de pobreza, en adoptar medidas y políticas públicas para enfrentar el cambio climático. Latinoamérica tiene su agenda también para enfrentar y reducir la pobreza y lograr efectos de inclusión de la mujer en la economía. Entonces, es una agenda vasta, con programas en cada uno de nuestros países que no nos dejan quietos, y donde hay que tener claro que en esta resiliencia y en este proceso de fortalecer nuestras economías y nuestras comunidades, debemos tener claro que el seguro juega un rol relevante, juega un rol importante. Y el seguro, sin embargo, en el documento de Naciones Unidas sobre los Objetivos de Desarrollo aparece una sola vez la palabra, ¿verdad? Siendo una de las herramientas más importantes o más a mano que podría tener el mundo para lograr esos objetivos y lograr sociedades más resilientes. El documento de Costa Rica, hice yo el ensayo de buscar esas palabrillas, y educación financiera aparece una vez en todo el documento. Seguro aparece 7 veces, pero las 7 veces que aparece se refiere a los esquemas de seguridad social obligatorios que todos nuestros países tienen como red de protección básica para su población. Seguro privado no aparece ni una sola vez. Entonces, bueno, la relevancia del seguro hay que considerarla y hay que ponerle en el frente para estas discusiones, y qué mejor manera que empezar a incorporarlas en las discusiones de los reguladores, que de un tiempo para acá empiece a estar más presente. Por ello que esta agenda que hemos estructurado, la primera sesión se refiere a los objetivos del desarrollo y el cambio climático, para darle un espacio a esa discusión. La sesión primera hablaremos de regulación y supervisión de InsurTech, riesgos emergentes que empiezan a aflorar, oportunidades extraordinarias. Gobierno corporativo, funciones de control, función actuarial y función de riesgos, suenan temas conocidos en todas nuestras jurisdicciones, son temas que se van incorporando a la normativa y a los procesos de supervisión, donde tendremos también panelistas extraordinarios de primera línea. Y la sesión tercera, para cerrar el día, estaremos incorporando un tema por demás vinculado también a los asuntos de cambio climático e inclusión financiera, como es el seguro agropecuario. Cómo lograr mayor inclusión y lograr herramientas para enfrentar el cambio climático. Y el día de mañana partiremos con temas muy relevantes, tal vez tercer pilar de la estructuración del marco de supervisión de IAIS, que es la conducta de mercado, la conducta de negocios. Hemos enfocado las baterías muy fuertemente en solvencia, más tardíamente en los temas de gobernanza, de gestión, de idoneidad de las altas direcciones y de la alta gerencia de las compañías, y el tema de conducta de mercado, el tema de trato justo al consumidor, es un tema cuya agenda está un poco más relegada y que debemos de retomar. Y finalmente, estaremos también mañana hablando de las experiencias e implementación de los modelos de tipo Solvencia 2 y la implementación de la NIF 17 y la NIF 9, que son pues tareas técnicas, tareas operativas que nos tienen también ocupados a las distintas jurisdicciones del área. Así que yo los invito a disfrutar el seminario como yo ya lo estoy disfrutando y agradecerles nuevamente la presencia de ustedes, porque sin ustedes esto no es posible. Agradecerles la presencia y el estar aquí, a los panelistas, a los que nos visitan de afuera. Costa Rica siempre les abre los brazos y siempre tendrá un lugar en su corazón, y esperamos que estos paseos por Costa Rica no sean solo de trabajo, sino que en algún momento gatille ese interés por conocer el país un poco más profundamente. Muchas gracias y sean bienvenidos y damos por abierto el seminario, por favor.
Muchísimas gracias, don Tomás. Y en este proceso de bienvenida queremos invitar al señor Connor Donaldson, quien se unió a la IAIS en julio de 2012 y actualmente se desempeña como jefe de implementación, un puesto que ha ocupado desde noviembre de 2017. En su función actual, apoya al Comité de Implementación y Evaluación y administra el trabajo de la IAIS en el área de evaluación, desarrollo de capacidades y desarrollo de supervisión, inclusión financiera y cooperación de supervisión. Connor también representa a los miembros de la IAIS en foros mundiales centrados en la implementación de estándares internacionales y trabaja en estrecha colaboración con los socios de la implementación como el Instituto de Estabilidad Financiera, el Banco Mundial, el Fondo Monetario Internacional, la Iniciativa de Acceso a Seguros, el Banco Asiático de Desarrollo y otros para avanzar iniciativas de desarrollo de capacidades. Connor también es miembro de la Junta Asesora sobre Seguros y Pensiones del Centro de Toronto, la Red de Monitoreo de Implementación de la Junta de Estabilidad Financiera, y es un orador habitual y colaborador de seminarios y eventos de capacitación. Es decir, que es un gran amigo y colaborador de la SUGESE y ya podemos decir que Costa Rica es parte ya de su casa. Quisiera invitar a don Connor para que nos dirija sus palabras.
Buenos días. Pura vida. It's an honor to be here today. Unfortunately, I have to speak in English. This is my 5th time in Costa Rica, and every time I come, I say, next time I'll do a presentation in Spanish. So again, next time, I'll do my best. And Thomas, thank you very much for the kind words. In fact, actually, this is the first time that I've been to Costa Rica and taken the opportunity to visit the country, and I can say it was a beautiful experience. My family enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I feel like I want to say yo soy tico, but I don't think people will believe me. So I have a couple of slides that I just wanted to go through. I think we're pulling them up. But indeed, I wanted to take the opportunity this morning to provide a quick introduction of the IAIS, so the International Association of Insurance Supervisors. What are the key things that we do as a standard-setting body? What are our key work streams currently? And what does the future look like for the IAIS? I think, as Thomas referenced in his opening remarks, yesterday we had an opportunity for a discussion looking out towards the horizon. What are the key topics that are going to keep insurance supervisors engaged and busy for the coming years? And there's a lot of alignment between the work that the IAIS anticipates undertaking, as well as the key topics that are on the top of the agenda for insurance supervisors in the region. So, who we are. The IAIS is a global standard-setting body. We have a membership of 200 different insurance supervisory authorities. I think last count, actually, the number is 217. We are a body consisting of insurance supervisors from all over the world. We are a body of insurance supervisors, as I mentioned, from all over the world. One of the key things that differentiates us as a standard-setting body is the fact that over 60% of our membership come from emerging markets and developing economies. So the IAIS is a very broad tent organization, 200 plus insurance supervisory authorities, consisting of about 130 different countries, 63 of which are from emerging markets and developing economies, and our membership supervisors who are part of the IAS's membership are indeed overseeing markets that are undertaking approximately 97% of global insurance business. So we have, I think, a fair claim to say that we are, one, a very inclusive organization, but two, also that we have a very wide perspective on the topics that are facing insurance supervisors. So there's three main aspects to the work that we do. So first is, of course, our policy development work. At our core, we are a standard-setting body, and what that entails is the development of international standards for the supervision of insurance. That is, at our core, the center of our mandate, and the work that we do that builds upon our standards is, one, our financial stability work, where we have adopted as part of our mission statement our recognition that the IAIS has an important role to play in contributing to global financial stability, and that we have an important role to play in terms of monitoring the global insurance market to identify challenges, issues, risks that could contribute to global financial instability. Lastly, an important part of who we are as an association is a commitment to supporting implementation of the supervisory material that we develop. So when we talk about the insurance core principles, when we talk about things that I suspect we'll hear about over the course of the coming days, ComFrame, solvency standards, these are all part of the IAIS's supervisory material, but indeed we have a commitment to support the implementation of these standards. So working very closely with supervisory authorities, working very closely with our implementation partners to support supervisors on their trajectory towards implementing the supervisory material that we develop. We also, as part of our implementation mandate, undertake assessment activities. So many of you will have heard of the work that the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank has done. Some of you may even have experienced the Financial Sector Assessment Program. We do our own assessment work, which is really designed to help inform supervisors on steps that they can take to enhance their observance of our supervisory material. We also support supervisory cooperation, so providing an opportunity for supervisors to come together, both informally through the meetings that we organize and the global events that we organize, but also through our multilateral memorandum of understanding, which provides a framework to give confidence to supervisors to be able to share information with their counterparts in other jurisdictions. We're at a very interesting time as an association. We are in our 25th year, but we are also looking towards the future. And what I mean by that is that we are in the final stages of completing the post-crisis reforms. The financial crisis, when we talk about it, it seems very long ago, 10 years ago. And indeed, this has been something that has kept us very busy since 2008. There were, I think it's fair to say, a number of gaps or deficiencies that were identified within the global regulatory framework, exposed by the financial crisis, exposed by some of the issues that supervisors faced during that period. And so we've spent a lot of time over the last 10 years trying to address those gaps. So the development of the common framework for the supervision of internationally active insurance groups, So these are large insurers doing business in multiple jurisdictions that pose unique challenges to supervisors. So developing a framework that will hopefully facilitate more consistent and enhanced supervision of these firms. We've also, as part of that work, been working on a quantitative solvency standard that will support the supervision of these internationally active insurance groups, the insurance capital standard. This has been a significant undertaking on the part of the IAIS, involving jurisdictions from all over the world. I'm happy to say that we're in the final stages. There's a lot of hard work that remains, but hopefully in November we will adopt ICS 2.0 for the 5-year monitoring period. And this will be an opportunity for us to see how the insurance capital standard works in supervising these internationally active insurance groups. It won't be a PCR or a prescribed capital requirement, but it will be something that hopefully allows us to get a better understanding of whether or not the ICS will work in the context of supervising these internationally active insurance groups. One of the final aspects of the post-crisis reforms that we've been working on is addressing systemic risk in the financial sector. Now, there's been a lot of debate over the last few years around what exactly is the role that insurance plays in global financial stability. And what we recognized is that the approach that we had moved forward with immediately following the financial crisis, which was the identification of specific entities, generally very large, complex institutions, may not be the best way for assessing and addressing systemic risk in the financial sector. So we've been working very hard over the last few years on developing what we call a holistic framework, one that looks more at the activities that insurance entities undertake and getting a better sense of how those specific activities could contribute to financial instability. But what's so interesting for us at the IAIS is that at the same time that we're finalizing these post-crisis reforms, we're also adopting a new 5-year strategic plan. I'm happy to say that in June, this plan was adopted. And this plan, I think, allows us to transition from regulating the last crisis to actually be able to look at what are the risks, trends, and issues that could actually contribute to the next financial crisis. So we go from looking backwards towards looking to the future. And a big part of this is, first off, bringing more stability to the supervisory material that we've developed. We've been going through an intensive period of development of international standards. I think we've heard loud and clear from our membership that we need to slow down, give people an opportunity to implement these standards. Seminars like this are a great opportunity for that. But indeed, this is something that I think has informed what our key high-level goals will be for the coming 5 years. Greater stability to our supervisory material, a broader pivot towards implementation as an association. So what can we do to enhance our work in supporting implementation of our supervisory material? We want to facilitate the exchange of supervisory practices, so how supervisors actually go about supervising entities in a way that's consistent with the standards that we develop. We want to strengthen our implementation assessment work. We've already started this effort, but indeed, over the coming years, we anticipate actually doing more in the assessment space. So giving members a better tool to be able to identify where there could be gaps or deficiencies in their regulatory framework or their supervisory practices to allow them to have a higher level of observance of our supervisory material. We also recognize that at the IAIS, we're a body of supervisors. We don't have the expertise that many of our capacity building partners have or our technical assistance provider partners have. So working very closely with entities like the Financial Stability Institute, like the Toronto Centre, really does give us an opportunity to hopefully support supervisors in their journey towards strengthening their observance of our supervisory material. We also want to continue to support supervisory cooperation. This is something that's essential. The global insurance market is changing. There is a continued trend towards greater global integration of insurance markets, and it's very important that we support supervisors in being able to work closely with one another and to be able to exchange information with a high degree of confidence to be able to effectively supervise activities and insurance entities that are doing business on a cross-border basis. We'll also, of course, continue our work in monitoring global financial stability. So really looking at risk trends and challenges that could contribute to global financial instability. This is important for us in terms of our role as a standard-setting body, but also in terms of the actual transition from developing a framework, the holistic framework for assessing and monitoring risks that could contribute to financial instability, but also to be able to hopefully proactively identify those risks and to be able to take steps with our membership to address them before they do manifest as a more significant issue. Lastly, and this is something that Thomas mentioned in his opening, that I just wanted to really emphasize, is that the IIS recognizes that many of the topics that are facing insurance supervisors today are actually stretching supervisors beyond the traditional supervisory paradigm. So we want to work with our membership to be able to support them to have conversations on a regular basis around developments in terms of fintech, looking at the issues, risks that innovation creates for the financial sector and for insurance markets in particular, but also to be able to support them to support the opportunities that those innovations have in terms of increasing access to insurance products, but also lowering the costs and hopefully driving greater financial inclusion. Cyber is another topic that our membership has identified as being a key issue that will likely face supervisors over the coming 5 years. So we anticipate doing a lot of work in this area, working very closely with our membership to identify issues around resilience for financial institutions, supporting supervisors to be able to develop an appropriate response in that regard, but also in terms of understanding what role insurance is playing in terms of providing risk coverage for cyber incidents. And this is something that I think many insurance companies are looking at this as a market that could continue to grow in the coming years. And so we want to make sure that supervisors are developing appropriate frameworks for assessing the underwriting practices of these types of insurance products and making sure that the right risk management frameworks are in place. Climate and sustainability. It's very clear that this is a topic of incredible importance in terms of the global policy agenda, but also in terms of the core mandate of insurance supervisors. Insurance companies are both a risk taker, but also potentially susceptible themselves to some of the risks that climate change is posing. So in this regard, continuing our collaboration with the Sustainable Insurance Forum, but also working very closely with our membership to make sure that we have sufficient tools in place that allow supervisors to understand, identify, and address the risks associated with climate change, and making sure that the IIS continues to provide an opportunity for supervisors to come together to talk about the ongoing developments in this regard. Conduct and culture is another area where Thomas mentioned this morning. There'll be a discussion about it tomorrow morning, but I think it's fair to say that there is an increased recognition that conduct and culture is not only important for market conduct supervisors, but also increasingly for prudential supervisors as well. So we want to work with our membership to be able to ensure that there is an approach or steps that are taken by supervisors to understand how some of these conduct and culture risks could affect the mandates of prudential supervisors as well, and hopefully ensure greater collaboration between conduct and prudential supervisors. And lastly, on the protection gap, this is an area where it's clear that whilst there has been, I think, significant steps taken in terms of addressing the protection gap over the last few years, we are at a place now where it's important to recognize that further work is necessary. So this is bringing greater access to financial services, including insurance, and we've been working very closely with the Access to Insurance Initiative in terms of how do we bring or support supervisors to develop an enabling framework that allows for greater financial inclusion. But it's not only about bringing financial services. to previously excluded parts of the population, it's also in addressing some of the challenges associated with things such as an aging society. I think many of us recognize that in a number of developing markets, but also in developed markets, populations are aging. Whether or not the traditional social safety net that has been in place will continue to be there and will continue to have the same level of fiscal health that is necessary to support them, and making sure that we work with supervisors who are indeed looking at the role that the private sector can play, and in particular insurance companies can play, in terms of supporting steps to address that gap, that long-term savings gap that insurance supervisors, I think, have an important role to play. So all in all, the IAIS is in a place where I hope there's a great deal of alignment, and you can all see a great deal of alignment between the work that we see as being important at a global level with the issues and topics that insurance supervisors within the region are facing. I'm very pleased to be here today. Unfortunately, it's my last day. I fly back to Switzerland after about 3 weeks being here. So I've joked this morning that waking up in Costa Rica is always a good day. Tomorrow morning I wake up on an airplane. So I'll see if I still have that same level of smile when I say it. But indeed, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here, Thomas. Thank you very much for everyone for the opportunity to talk a little bit about the work of the IAIS. And I look forward to the rest of the discussions today, and I wish you a very productive seminar over the coming days. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Connor. Y pues vamos a dar inicio con la sesión inaugural, que son los objetivos del desarrollo y cambio climático. Voy a ir presentando a las personas que nos honrarán aquí en el panel y iniciaremos inmediatamente, ya que el tiempo es valioso. Tenemos el honor de contar con el señor Babak Abastadek, que es presidente y director ejecutivo del Toronto Centre desde junio de 2010. Él es responsable de todos los aspectos en las actividades estratégicas de desarrollo, de capacidades y operaciones de la organización. También se encarga de establecer relaciones con el liderazgo de los bancos centrales, las autoridades de supervisión a nivel mundial, así como los organismos internacionales de normalización. Con más de 25 años de experiencia en políticas públicas y relaciones con las partes interesadas en el sector privado, agencias gubernamentales y las ONGs. Babak ha desempeñado funciones de liderazgo en sectores altamente regulados como los servicios financieros, la energía y los recursos naturales. Antes de unirse al Toronto Centre, Babak ocupó cargos de liderazgo en las principales instituciones financieras canadienses de orientación internacional, como la Junta de Inversión de Plan de Pensiones de Canadá y el Sun Life Financial. Quisiera invitar a don Babak para que se nos una acá en este panel, por favor. Un fuerte aplauso para él. Thank you. Quisiera también llamar al señor Jeffrey John. Él se unió al equipo del FSI a mediados de 2011 como autor de seguros del FSI Connect, la herramienta de aprendizaje basada en la web para supervisores del sector financiero, en donde también es gerente de proyectos. Es el encargado del seminario web del programa de seminarios virtuales First One, que es el FSI, que organiza con la IAIS más bien. Representa al FSI en el grupo de trabajo de capital, solvencia y pruebas de campo de la IAIS, que actualmente está desarrollando los nuevos estándares globales de capital de seguros. Anteriormente fue miembro de la Secretaría de la IAIS, en donde apoyó a los grupos de trabajo que se ocupan de los temas de solvencia, actuariales y grupos de seguros. Desarrolló las recomendaciones de los supervisores de seguros globales para las políticas de la Junta de Estabilidad Financiera sobre gestión de crisis, entidades no reguladas y colegios de supervisión. Fue gerente en el Banco Central de Malasia, donde contribuyó al desarrollo del marco de capital basado en el riesgo de Malasia para las aseguradoras y fue responsable de la revisión actuarial de los productos de seguro de seguros de vida y salud. También dirigió un equipo responsable de la vigilancia macroprudencial del mercado financiero. Es miembro del Instituto de Actuarios del Reino Unido y actuario de riesgos empresariales Chartered. Es licenciado en Ciencias Actuariales de la City University de Londres, quien ya está aquí, y quisiéramos que le brindáramos un fuerte aplauso a don Jeffrey también. Moderará el señor Tomás Soleil, Superintendente General de Seguros de Costa Rica y Presidente de la Asociación de Supervisores de Seguros de América Latina.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
Again, buenos días. Okay, invitados distinguidos, damas y caballeros, es un placer estar con ustedes hoy, and I'm sorry that for the rest of my talk you'll be practicing your English. Just by way of a very brief background, Toronto Centre was established in 1998 as a nonprofit organization to train financial sector regulators and supervisors. We have trained supervisors in 190 jurisdictions since then, and trained about 12,000 mid to senior level officials from around the world. I'm very pleased to be in Costa Rica, although I kind of jammed it between the Canadian Thanksgiving yesterday and the annual meetings of the World Bank, IMF for the rest of the week. Unfortunately, I cannot stay here for very long, but I could not resist the invitation from Thomas to come here. We have trained intensively and extensively all 4 supervisory authorities in Costa Rica in the sectors of banking, insurance, pensions, and capital markets. We've also trained intensively many of ASSAL members, such as Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica, I mentioned, Guatemala, El Salvador, Mexico, Peru, Chile, Honduras, Panama, and Paraguay, either through our regional programs or through our country-specific programs. So it's quite an honor for me to be here. And it's also great to be sharing the stage with Tomás, who invited me to deliver the keynote address. Once again, he's a decisive leader and a dedicated professional who is committed to transforming his organization to international best practices, such as risk-based supervision, and to financial inclusion. These comments also dovetail well with what Connor was talking about and Thomas earlier. In insurance and financial sector, we talk a lot about liquidity, capital, this, that, and the private sector talks a lot about the private motive. But let's, in the context of this presentation, put the people back into the equation. Let's talk more about the people and various equations that we have. You heard about UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Has anyone heard about them? Is anyone not familiar with them? Can you raise your hands? Oh, great audience. So everyone's totally familiar. So that cut down about half of my speech. Excellent. The agenda for this exciting event reflects ASSAL and IAIS's mission. It should strengthen your capacity to play an important role in maintaining financial stability, supporting good governance, building up consumer protection, championing financial inclusion, allowing for supervisory cooperation and other matters. What I'm going to do today is really talk about the linkages between actions taken by insurance supervisors and the achievement of better outcomes. Insurance, and before I go back, Thomas mentioned, if I heard you correctly, there's insurance is mentioned about only one or few times in the SDG documents. If you look beneath the UN SDG documents, there's another document which is actually very important called the Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Addis Ababa Action Agenda for Financing. That's where they really drill down. On the basis of that agenda, the world leaders confirmed and ratified the SDGs at the UN General Assembly in 2015. So always let's keep that in mind. And financial sector is mentioned quite a bit in that document. But of course, it doesn't get the light of day. Let me see if I can show here. So we're talking about the SDGs. Sure. Thank you. We're talking about the SDGs, and insurance supervisors, essentially, and insurance has primary relevance in about 6 of the 17 SDGs. I'm highlighting them there. I'm not going to talk about every one of them. And at a secondary level, there's another 5 SDGs that insurance and financial sector actually support. So there's quite a bit. 11 out of 17 is not bad. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I'm going to focus on 3. It was mentioned that I'm talking about climate change. Earlier when I received the invitation, I was asked to talk about SDGs in general, but nonetheless, I have reduced it to 3. So let me walk you through those. When insurance supervisors remove barriers to the supply and demand for insurance, they promote economic growth and help bridge the protection gap. Therefore, they contribute to SDG 8, which is decent work and economic growth. It's one of the most important ones. When insurance supervisors facilitate market development through innovations that lead to inclusive insurance products and services, they offer new opportunities for women's empowerment, therefore contributing to SDG 5, gender equality. I'll be talking about that as well. The panel is all male, but I think it's important to talk a little bit about that. When insurance supervisors promote climate risk mitigation and resilience, they support responsible, sustainable development, contributing to SDG 13, climate action. Insurance facilitates economic activity by allowing more risks to be taken, reduces dependence on welfare programs, and contributes to development of capital markets. The effects of non-life insurance in particular on economic growth are even more significant in developing economies. Many of the world's underprivileged lack the necessities of life, including good education, nutrition, employment opportunities, and housing, and have little access to or trust in traditional financial institutions. Consequently, they are financially excluded. Sometimes they're called the unbanked. From the full range of risk mitigation tools offered by the insurance industry. Although improving financial inclusion requires multifaceted efforts, supervisors often play the key role. Let me show another slide here. Sorry about this. This is, if this was in front of me, it would have made it easier, but that's okay. I can just move here. Here we're talking about a bit of a vicious cycle for those of you who see that. We're talking about, oh, okay, thank you. My wife jokes to me that I don't even know where my shaving cream is, and I can just see that the slide was right there. So we're talking about a vicious cycle here, which is due to weak supervision and regulation. So lack of authority to act. This is, for example, competing mandates or inadequate legal powers. Inadequate framework for action, such as weak governance or substandard supervisory methodologies. Limited capacity to fully act on supervisory mandates. That's another problem. And corruption of the regulatory process, such as regulatory capture. In our world, in our views, insurance supervisors and regulators and financial sector, they play a really key role, sometimes in very difficult circumstances. Compounding this, insurance supervisors must have the capacity to regulate products and services that bear labels such as inclusive, micro, parametric, telematic, biometric, or peer-to-peer. Maybe I've missed a few, but these are important issues, which are being developed and delivered today by insurers. In addition, there are other emerging risks. Connor was very good at talking about some of them, but also some of the other risks are the impact of big data by insurers and big tech players, what's happening to your privacy, and the need to protect consumers from potential breaches and unfair discrimination. Conversely, with good capacity building efforts, this cycle, vicious cycle, can be broken and instead turn into a virtuous circle where strong regulation supervision can really play a role. So strong supervisors help to drive improvements to the regulatory framework. Proportional regulatory reforms can support less burdensome and more effective supervision and enable innovation. This can lead to sound and stable financial institutions and responsible market innovations such as consumer-centric products, alternative distribution channels, and uses of technologies that support inclusion. So this is really important to keep in mind, that the capacity makes a lot of difference, building capacity. Ultimately, this leads to improved economic growth by reducing poverty and raising the standard of living. Supervisory capacity can be strengthened through high-quality training programs which build awareness of financial inclusion into their oversight roles. In our work, we have found that the most sought-after programs are the ones that help supervisors apply a proportionate approach and risk-based approach rather than perpetuating the compliance-based approaches to supervision. RBS focuses limited resources on risks that matter most. It enables supervisors to address material risks in the most effective and efficient way while advancing other objectives such as financial inclusion. We've done RBS training for the last 10 years in a variety of settings for all financial sector, and this is really the key issue here. For example, supervisors can incorporate more flexibility in their risk assessment of insurance products when they work on RBS, including weather-related agricultural policies, low-cost maternity or barrier products, and basic property coverage for small businesses. That supports resilience and improves the speed to market of more accessible and affordable products than if traditional rules-based compliance methodologies had been used. We offer a range of high-quality programs to strengthen the capacity of supervisors and regulators, including how to apply RBS. Now, let me move to the second SDG, which is concerned with achieving gender equality and empowering women and girls, SDG 5. We have an active program in this area. For example, in July 2019, this year, we launched an innovative 3-year program with la Comisión Nacional de Bancos y Seguros de Honduras called Plan for Women's Financial Inclusion, which should help close the gender finance gap in Honduras. You might ask, how is this relevant to financial sector supervisors? We recognize that inclusive financial systems are formidable instruments for women's empowerment in developing countries. Women's ability to save, borrow, and control their own money and to insure themselves and their assets reduces poverty and promotes inclusive growth. Unfortunately, according to the United Nations and the World Bank, the persistence of gender gap is pervasive. More than 2 billion people around the world do not have access to basic financial services, and women comprise the majority. Therefore, access to financial services is key to promoting gender equality. Accordingly, supervisors must be aware that there are differences in insurable risks faced by women and men. Insurance offers protection for women working in the informal sector who often fall outside the reach of public social protection schemes. Insurance helps to protect women against the devastating personal and financial effects of reproductive health risks. Insurance protects women from financial impact of losing family members, enabling them to retain their homes, sustain their businesses, and continue the education of their children. So what can supervisors do to promote women's empowerment and access to inclusive insurance products? They can facilitate better understanding of the needs of women through gathering gender disaggregated market data using surveys and focus groups, and by engaging with financially underserved consumers and stakeholders that work with them. They can promote innovations such as digital inclusion that expand digital services to poor and rural women when distances are erased. They can take proportional and risk-based approaches to know your customer requirements for lower risk products in places where formal identification is less available. They can ensure that the women in their own organizations have a full opportunity to contribute and advance, and encourage industry players to do likewise by actively promoting the recruitment of women in insurance sector and the actuarial profession. So financial inclusion is directly linked to outcomes related to gender equality, such as better health and education, and plays an important role in achieving broader SDGs such as equality, growth, and peace. This brings me to insurance and climate change action. Climate change is occurring, and its consequences, commonly known as climate risk, result in acute events of greater frequency and severity, such as floods and droughts, chronic physical changes, such as rising sea levels, and relate to the transition toward a lower carbon economy, such as stranded assets. Insurance contributes to mitigating the financial effects of climate risk. However, excessive risk resulting from more frequent and higher claims can push insurers to limit coverage or withdraw from the market. So reinsurance might not necessarily be all that adequate when risks compound and get bigger, potentially leaving customers without recourse in a disaster. Therefore, climate change poses significant risks to not only the poor, but to all households, businesses, financial institutions, and intermediaries, and to global financial stability. Climate change is becoming an increasing important issue for insurance supervisors. Why? Because insurance mitigates the effects of extreme weather events, thereby strengthening climate change resilience. Insurance complements and strengthens other climate coping efforts. And because catastrophe insurance protects a variety of stakeholders from companies and infrastructure to the most vulnerable. What can insurance supervisors do to promote climate risk mitigation and resilience? They can engage in international collaboration, enabling them to share knowledge and develop consistent approaches to dealing with climate-related risks. They can undertake research and training, helping them to better understand climate-related risks and build their capacity in relation to issues including transition risks and stranded assets. This is particularly very important for a country like Canada or some of the resource-rich countries in Latin America where, if you recall, coal is becoming more and more redundant. Petroleum might follow, although the timeline is very long, but these transitional risks are absolutely very critical. They can develop guidance or recommend regulation that support effective responses to climate-related risks, for example, by reflecting it in the company's own risk and solvency assessment. And they can ensure that the organizations they supervise take effective action, such as climate-related financial disclosures and stress testing. Toronto Centre understands that the risks posed by climate change are relevant to all parts of the financial sector. Accordingly, we have expanded programs and developed other resources to provide information on how all entities operating in the financial sector might respond to these risks through their governance, strategies, risk management, metrics and targets, and disclosures. In turn, this will help supervisors to promote these approaches in their countries. I'm pleased to announce that Toronto Centre will be launching a new program in December with the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank to help supervisors in the region identify the risks that climate change and other environmental factors pose to financial institutions, economies, and consumers, including vulnerable groups, and identify steps that can be taken to deal with these risks. I hope one day we can offer the same kind of program to ASSAL members and others in Latin America as well. As I close my remarks, I have a final set of observations. I'm told there are several people here who are from the private sector. So this might apply to you, but also to the supervisors who regulate you and supervise you. Toronto Centre's vantage point gives us access to not only to supervisors, but also to regulated insurers and intermediaries from around the world. As you participate in this program and then return to your offices to take up the challenging work of supervision, consider the following aspects of your interactions with the regulated entities. These regulated entities seek to comply with all regulations and to maintain a positive relationship with supervisors while profitably growing their business. These regulated entities seek proportionate regulation, fair supervision, and sufficient flexibility to avoid unnecessary barriers to their success. This means environment that encourages them to develop innovative products and service solutions, which will better meet the needs of all consumers, including the excluded or underserved. Therefore, properly applying a proportionate risk-based approach to supervision will help to create an enabling environment for the sector to flourish and provide the necessary financial inclusion products needed to support the sustainable development goals, including poverty reduction and everything else that I've talked to today. What you do as supervisors every day has a ripple effect that cascades across government, NGOs, and the private sector, impacting the economies of your countries and their inhabitants. This contributes to achieving the UN SDGs, in particular, no poverty, climate action, quality education, gender equality, decent work, and economic growth. Toronto Centre supports supervisors to implement better insurance supervision and to meet their national SDG commitments. We have published several supervisory guidance notes that assess this issue both from a technical and change management perspective, and I'm happy to discuss them with you after my remarks, or you can visit our website. One slide that I really would like to show you after this is a slide of it's a small commercial for our funders and sponsors without whom we could not do our work. So obviously we're very grateful to the work, to the support we receive from the Government of Canada, Swedish Government, IMF, the Jersey Overseas Aid and Comic Relief, and the World Bank that have been supporting us since our inception. And at this point, I would like to thank Thomas again for this opportunity to speak to you today. And thank you all for your valued service, and I hope you enjoyed the program. And it was really great to be able to see Connor and our colleagues from FSI. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today, and I would like to start by thanking ASSAL, Sukesi, and personal thanks to Thomas for inviting the FSI to this regional seminar today to share some of our work on climate risk. So for those of you who do not know FSI, we are part of the Bank for International Settlements based in Basel, and one of our key mandate is to assist financial sector supervisors around the world in implementing international standards and to getting up to speed with the latest relevant market developments. So this is what I plan to cover today. Just to give you a bit of a context of what I will be talking about, I will introduce what one of our key activities at the FSI called the policy implementation work, and a recent project and paper that we're working on climate risk, and I'll share some of the key findings from this project. For those of you who heard this presentation yesterday, I do apologize for repeating myself, but I will go a little bit into the technical details given that this is a more seminar setting. Just to start off, the FSI's policy implementation work is really about analyzing different regulatory approaches and supervisory practices on specific topics that are of interest to financial sector regulators. We launched the project on climate risk about May this year, and we were asked to look into this topic, and having spoken to some of our key stakeholders, we quickly narrowed the scope of this work to risk assessment in the insurance sector. And the aim of this paper is looking at two dimensions in particular, from a regulatory perspective as well as from the supervisory perspective. From the regulatory perspective, we were trying to understand what regulatory requirements are currently in place in the different jurisdictions to address climate risk. And from a supervisory side, we wanted to understand what insurance supervisors are doing to understand climate risk exposure of insurance companies in their jurisdiction. And for this, to get information, we surveyed 18 insurance authorities who are members of the Sustainable Insurance Forum. The Sustainable Insurance Forum, or the SIF, if you have not heard of this body, is a body sponsored by the United Nations Environment Programme, consisting only of insurance regulators, so it's a subset of IAIS membership. So regulators who are, so to speak, coalition of the willing in trying to address this very important topic of climate risk. And I had the great pleasure and honor to work with colleagues from several authorities. So this paper is co-authored with my colleague Jean-Philippe from the FSI, William Harding from APRA, the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority, Patrick Cleary from the Bank of England, and also Jeremy McDaniels, who is the Secretariat of the SIF. So this paper is very close to publication. We hope to publish the paper in November, just before the next SIF meeting, and it will become then available on our website, and hopefully you will find it useful as well. So I would like to start by sort of explaining why climate change has come to the fore. I'm sure that all of you have heard and read in the recent weeks a lot of news about climate change, and this is partly due to the conferences that were held recently in New York, the UN Climate Summit. But I would like to start with a quote by Jeff Summerhays, who is the IAIS Executive Committee Climate Champion and also a board member of the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority, as well as chair of the SIF. So basically the quote is saying that if you do not buy this argument now, you will pay for it later. So really calling fellow insurance authorities globally to convert awareness into concrete actions. And the pictures below here are just some of the sort of drivers that I see as being pushing the climate agenda forward. Firstly, of course, the media, the increasing media and social attention. You may have read about the Extinction Rebellion, so global protests, people going to the streets demanding government to take concrete actions to address climate change. And of course, we have Greta, who is, I guess, now the symbol of global symbol of climate activism, also has pushed this agenda to the fore. Political momentum as well, that inaction is no longer tolerated. So at the recent United Nations Climate Summit last month, 66 countries pledged carbon neutrality by 2050, and this is a very significant commitment to bring about change. And in the European Union, the EU will dedicate 25%, so a quarter of the EU's budget next year, to deal with climate change issues. So this is a very substantive issue and great action being brought about, at least in Europe. From the industry's perspective, so many different initiatives are happening right now. I'll just highlight one. So a third of the global banking industry has signed up to align their business practices with what is called the Paris Agreement. And so 87 companies with over $2 trillion of market capitalization has also pledged to align their business to a 1.5 degree future. So you may have read in the headlines, in news headline, this 1.5 degree target. So what is this 1.5 degree target all about? And why are people talking about 1.5 degree? So this brings me to the next part, where it's probably not very, very good to start the morning with like a horror story, but this is the scaremongering part of my presentation. But it is scary. I mean, I myself am very new to this topic. I just got to know about this topic when I worked on this project. But the more you learn about this project, it becomes very clear very quickly that things are becoming really bad, and we are almost at a point where there's very little window of opportunity to make real change, to change the course of our world. So coming back to this slide here, on the left-hand side is a very famous chart that is produced by what's called the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. So this IPCC is a coalition of climate scientists from all over the world that is doing a lot of work in the area of climate science and supporting the policymakers, supporting the work of the United Nations, for example. So the Paris Agreement that was signed in December 2015 basically is targeting that the global temperature increase will be limited to no more than 2 degrees compared to pre-industrial level. And I'll come back to why 2 degrees is important. And efforts should be taken to limit temperature increase to not more than 1.5 degrees. And so where are we today? So if you look at the blue line on the chart there, we are about 1 degree above the pre-industrial level in terms of temperature. Now, assuming that emissions, carbon dioxide emissions, is cut immediately and reduces to 0 by 2055, then we are expected to reach a 1.5 degree temperature increase by 2040. But this is a lot of ifs and based on a lot of assumptions. Now, what might happen if we reach 2 degrees or even more? And this is where the chart on the right-hand side of this slide is trying to show. So I'll just pick out a few key highlights to illustrate the really bad scenario we might end up with. So firstly is the coastal assets that are in harm's way. So it's about 11.7 trillion US dollars is estimated. So if we are on the trajectory of 2 degrees Celsius temperature increase, 11.7 trillion US dollars of properties are at harm's way from natural catastrophes. In terms of tropical cyclones, the frequency is expected to increase by increased by about 16%. In terms of frequency of extreme rainfall, by 36%. And from a more monetary perspective, global GDP is expected to shrink by about 13%. And this is really a catastrophic scenario. Now, translating climate change and climate science into what we call climate risk. Now, this is a very important distinction to make. So when we talk about climate risk, in the financial sense, it really refers to financial risk arising from climate change. So as regulators, we are not, from a prudential perspective, concerned about climate change for the sake of climate change, but what it means in terms of financial risk for policyholders, for financial stability, and for the safety and soundness of firms. So this chart here is showing the insured catastrophe losses over the last 30 years or so, and you can see the peaks there, number 5, 7, and 9. These are the big hurricanes that happened over the last 10 years or so. Now you can see that there is an increase in extreme losses from weather-related natural catastrophe. But the question that we need to ask ourselves is, what is driving the increase? Is it really the increase in frequency of such events, the severity of such events, or actually the risk exposure? And these are the 3 main ingredients that translate into insured losses. So let's try to dig a little bit deeper into this. So first of all, from the perspective of risk exposure, so the picture on the left here shows the Miami Strip. So back in 1925, you can see that there's one building. And in 2017, and maybe even 2019 now, you can see that the number of buildings have increased significantly along the Miami Strip. So clearly, this is just one very vivid evidence that the risk exposure has increased. And on the right-hand side here, is the chart is showing the number of population that's expected to be living around the coastal areas around the globe by 2016. And you can see that the circles are the projected what's called mega cities, over 8 million people living in low elevation coastal areas. So clearly there's evidence that risk exposure has increased, which sort of explain why the insured losses has increased over the last 30 years. Now, moving on to the more sort of sometimes controversial topic of whether climate change is really translating or manifesting itself into higher frequency and higher severity of natural catastrophe. Now, this is not entirely clear-cut, and it's I think it's for me, of course, I would sort of support this this assumption, but it is surprising that some people are still not convinced that climate change is actually one of the key drivers of the increased severity and frequency of natural catastrophes. So the chart on the left-hand side here, sort of more or less, it shows the number of tropical Atlantic Basin tropical cyclone, and you can see that there's no clear evidence that the number of tropical cyclones is actually increasing over the last 50 years. And there are some outliers, but there's no clear trend. But if you look on the chart on the right-hand side, which is produced by the IPCC only a few weeks ago, this is another very scary chart. And I promise this is my last scary chart of the presentation this morning. And so this chart basically shows the year when what they call the historical centennial events are projected to occur once every year. So this means that the worst imaginable sea level events, so your big hurricanes, your really strong hurricanes that would typically happen once every 100 years, is expected to occur actually every single year from a certain period of time. So this is really a scary scenario. And if you look at the Central American and the Latin American region, you can see some purple dots there, and that indicates that the projection is by 2020 or 2030, such catastrophic events that would usually occur once every 100 years will start to occur once every year. So this is, and this is coming from the world's leading climate scientists. So not a good situation, and a lot needs to be done. So that's all good about climate change, but what does it mean for insurance regulators and insurance supervision? So the prudential relevance of climate change. A useful way to think about this is how does such climate risk translate into what is more commonly known as mainstream risk. And this chart here shows you two broad categories of climate risk. On the left-hand side is what's called physical risk, so risk arising from meteorological and weather-related events, such as melting ice caps because of the increasing global temperature, and causing floods in large coastal cities. So physical risk can clearly and very obviously manifest itself in insurance risk. So insurance companies paying out much more claims than they would expect. And this obviously will expose them to higher insurance risk. But also on the asset side of their balance sheet might be impacted in terms of market risk. So their investments in corporates and businesses that are exposed to climate change. For example, if businesses are interrupted, they cannot produce their goods, they cannot deliver their services, and if insurance companies are invested in those corporations, their investments will also be exposed to investment losses, and hence giving rise to market risk. On transition risk, this is about how society and government might be successful in implementing policies towards reducing that scary chart and keeping to our 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius limit. And this involves, reducing emissions, pulling out of high carbon intense sectors such as oil and gas. And obviously the first concern here is from an insurance company's perspective is if they have any investments in such a carbon intensive sector, which would give rise to market risk. And you can see that other types of risk, operational risk, credit risk, can also materialize from the different climate change channels. So one interesting information that we got from the study that we did came from the National Bank of Belgium, and this chart here shows a survey that the National Bank of Belgium did among insurance companies on their views of what are the key risk drivers. What are the key risk drivers for physical and transition risk? And for physical risk, in terms of climate trends, changing weather patterns and temperature rise are viewed as a significant risk. And from a transition perspective, changing consumer preferences and their reputational risk, if they do not act, are deemed to be quite harmful. Now, coming back to So that sort of sets the tone. And coming back to the survey that we did, so let's first look at the regulatory requirements that are in place to address climate risk. So the first area that we explored was surrounding enterprise risk management frameworks. So the insurance core principle here is listed that says insurance supervisors in their ERM framework should require insurers ERM framework to identify all reasonably and relevant material risks. And it was very good and also a powerful statement that we found all the surveyed authorities agreed that climate risk is reasonably foreseeable and relevant and material. And as a consequence or by implication, expect all their insurance companies to address climate risk in their ERM framework. So this is a very strong statement and finding that came out from our survey. But interestingly, not many of the authorities have specific or prescriptive requirements in this regard. So they expect insurance companies to address climate risk, but they are not issuing like specific regulatory rules on this area on the basis that the existing ERM requirements are mainly principles-based and therefore are already sufficiently broad enough to be tailored and implemented in a climate risk context. Some of the supervisors also found that less legally binding rules, so not issuing legislation or guidance is effective or needed or necessary because of the time it takes to go through all the legislative process. So some authorities have gone down the route of issuing what is called supervisory statement. So these statements are issued directly by authorities that sets out what they expect companies to do in this area, and this has proven to be effective in countries or jurisdictions like the UK. And also in this area, interestingly, we found that supervisors are more open to accepting flaws or weaknesses in insurers' practice, recognizing that this is an emerging area and everyone is in a learning and understanding mode. So there's more room to be more forgiving for weaknesses in, for example, risk quantification of climate risk by insurance companies. And then we covered what was, we asked insurance, the authorities what they expected to see in insurance companies' own risk and solvency assessment or the ORSA. And here on this slide listed some of the things that they would expect insurance companies to report in their ORSA report. So for example, in terms of how climate risk may manifest, given the insurance company's business profile and the types of business that they underwrite, the techniques that they use to assess climate risk, and who, in terms of corporate governance, who within the organization are responsible for managing climate risk, and also what are the risk mitigation actions. So these are just to give you a broad idea on some of the things that supervisors would expect to see in the ORSA. And coming a little bit deeper into the insurance risk assessment models, the surveyed supervisors generally do not prescribe very detailed or very specific requirements in this area, recognizing that climate risk assessment models are still developing. And oftentimes, before I got involved in this project, I heard that, oh, we are already addressing climate change because we have a natural catastrophe models, vendor models. But when I understood a little bit deeper, actually, just because an insurance company has a natural catastrophe model does not mean they are addressing climate risk, because a lot of those models are actually not considering the climate scenarios, the 2-degree, the 4-degree, the 6-degree scenario. So the chart on the right-hand side here shows some of the specificities of models that need to be captured in order to really address climate scenarios. So the non-linearity feature is, the 3 hurricanes bar that I showed you just a few slides ago. The clustering, it means a clustering of very severe or extreme events, and such feature must be captured in a risk model in order to be really addressing climate change. So it was also interesting that the risk assessment models by insurance companies has actually prompted tangible change in the way insurance companies run their business. So for example, in Belgium, we found out that insurers have started adjusting their investment strategy in response to their current and potential climate change impacts. And also, interestingly, the numbers that comes out from the climate risk model is not deemed to be the most important thing. So actually, supervisors are more concerned with the learning and the whole governance process in thinking about the scenarios and the what-ifs that might happen, rather than what's the number that comes out from the model in order for companies to better understand their climate risk exposure. So this slide here just shows you some of the risk models that are available. The PACTA, the table, the first column, the PACTA tool, the so-called PACTA tool, is actually used by the Bank of England in their insurance stress test, and companies can actually use this tool to quantify their investments exposure to transition risks. So what are regulators concerned with? The top concern that was very clear from our survey is in terms of data. So a lot of regulators were concerned with the poor quality or insufficient data, which may impact on the reliability of the risk modeling results. Also the black box modeling approaches. So if companies take just models that are either available freely or paid by certain vendors, it is not very clear how the models are calibrated to capture the climate scenarios, and you can see the other concerns as well. And moving on to the last part of our study, looking at what supervisors themselves are doing to assess climate risk exposure. Stress tests and scenario analysis are the most commonly used tools, and this was very clear from the approach taken by the Bank of England and also the Netherlands Bank. Both authorities have undertaken climate risk stress tests for their insurance sector. Now, a key challenge for these authorities was how to translate the climate scenario, so the 2-degree, 4-degree, 6-degree scenario, into concrete stresses that companies can then apply on their balance sheet. And to do this, they had to really engage with climate scientists, meteorological experts, with academia, because the knowledge is just not available within our authorities. On this chart here, I just pulled the concrete stress factors from the Bank of England's insurance stress test that they are running this year. The scenarios A, B, C. So scenario A is assuming a sudden and disorderly transition to a carbon neutral future. Scenario B is an orderly transition, and scenario C is if transition is not successful and the temperature increase goes up to 4 degrees. And you can see the different stress factors that they ask their insurance companies to run. From an insurance company's perspective, challenges, again, in terms of data. So data here is not so much about lack of data, but the relevance of data for their risk modeling purposes. Some of the climate data is available at the national level instead of, for example, at a product-specific level or at a risk exposure level, which makes it difficult for them to use in their risk model. So this is an area that clearly came out as a more work needs to be done area. And finally, key policy issues for consideration. Yesterday, we have discussed at the high-level meeting some of these key policy issues, but here I just put a snapshot. So the first issue already touched on by Babak was the sort of the trade-off between risk quantification and protection gap and financial inclusion. So as insurance companies become more and more aware of their risk exposure to climate change and becomes better at quantifying their risk exposure, they might end up increasing premiums or making insurance products more expensive or withdrawing cover from certain geographical area or certain business lines, leading to financial exclusion. So the policy question here is, as an insurance supervisor or insurance regulator, what is your role in addressing this sort of broader than prudential concern? The second block is about the ERM requirements. Are existing ERM requirements sufficient, the principles-based approach, or should it be more specific and more prescriptive? And the third block I would categorize is on capital requirements. So there's now starting to be some discussion on whether insurance regulators should calibrate capital requirements to address climate risk. It is still unclear whether capital is the right regulatory tool in this regard. So this is still a question mark in terms of policy making. Green finance. So is it the role of regulators to nudge insurance companies to invest in green investments, so investments that are climate friendly? Or is this beyond the role of prudential regulators? So another big question mark that comes back to what's the mandate of insurance authorities. And lastly, I'll just leave you with this, the chart in the middle. So if things are going really well and all the policy works well to contain the temperature increase to not more than 2 degrees, then insurance companies are exposed to higher transition risk because of the stranded assets, in potentially having investments in oil and gas and carbon-intensive sectors. But on the other hand, if transition is not successful and temperature goes beyond the 2-degree target, they are exposed to physical risk. So this is a real dilemma that it seems that either way, if they are not taking action right now, if they don't really understand their climate risk exposure, they may end up in a lose-lose situation, which would also then become your problem as insurance authority. So coming back to the title of the paper that I hope will be published in a couple of weeks' time, Climate Risk, Let's Turn Up the Heat for Action Now. And with that, I hand over to Thomas.
Muchísimas gracias, Babak y Jeffrey, por esas estupendas presentaciones. Acá hay uno, acá hay uno. Muchísimas gracias por esas estupendas presentaciones. En realidad es un tema que hace tiempo queríamos incorporar en las agendas de los seminarios de ASSAL y hemos ido poco a poco trayéndolo. Déjenme decirles que es un tema que a mí personalmente me toca algunas fibras. No sé, pocas veces un regulador, así que estamos en oferta, abre su corazón y abre su corazón, tenemos corazón a un público así. Y déjenme contarles, bueno, yo cuando era chiquillo tenía un perrito. Creía que tenía un perrito en realidad. En realidad mamá me dejaba alimentarlo. La primera vez que incursionó a la casa salió aplaudido para que saliera de la casa. Y ese perrito yo le llamaba Pipo, papá le decía Firulais. Ese perrito se me vino a la mente hace poco con una de las fotos de una de las tragedias que hemos tenido en Costa Rica, ¿va? Hace un par de años. Y ese perrito me recordó a Firulais, era parecido, no era un perrito fino. Y es que cuando uno ve estos embates de la naturaleza, que nos golpean a todos por igual, pero a unos más que otros, ¿va? Y hay poblaciones bastante excluidas, y estos embates naturales golpean más fuertemente a aquellos que menos tienen, ¿verdad? Y lo poco que tienen lo pierden en segundos. Por ello es que estos temas deben ocupar la agenda de los reguladores, sin duda, y el espacio en estas actividades no tradicionales que nos decía hace un momento Connors, que debe tener el regulador para ir generando las capacidades internas para afrontarlos y para incorporarlos en la agenda son realmente importantes. La brecha de protección impide atender este tipo de casos en algunas de estas circunstancias, y esta gente, al final de cuentas, estos ciudadanos, compañeros de tránsito en este mundo, les cuesta más levantarse y sobreponerse de estos eventos. Y allí es donde el seguro sin duda tiene un rol extraordinario. Le pido la licencia a los compañeros latinoamericanos para enfocarnos un poco en los datos de Costa Rica. Ya hemos visto la perspectiva filosófica, global, donde los objetivos de desarrollo incorporan estos temas y donde hay toda una agenda regulatoria para poder ir acompañando también a las distintas jurisdicciones en este proceso. Pero permítanme entonces dedicarle un poco de tiempo a los datos de Costa Rica y que tenemos también pues, enfrente para ir incorporando en nuestra agenda. Decíamos don Carlos Manuel Rodríguez, el ministro de Medio Ambiente, en la PRECOP la semana pasada, que el mundo, el país seguramente, gasta 10 veces más dinero destruyendo la naturaleza que recuperándola, ¿verdad? Y Costa Rica en los últimos 30 años logró, para que veamos que es posible soñar y hacer cosas interesantes, logró recuperar y duplicar su cobertura boscosa, llegamos al 50% del territorio en cobertura boscosa, habíamos pasado décadas deforestando en 30 años, al tiempo que duplicamos la población del país, es decir, tiene más tensión esos recursos naturales para nuestro desarrollo, y triplicamos el Producto Interno Bruto, ¿no? Entonces son números que nos dicen que es posible hacer ese balance. Este reciente documento de la OCDE, que hace el caso de Costa Rica, le hace un zoom y revisa qué tan preparado está el país para enfrentar institucionalmente estos desastres naturales, y revisa los últimos desastres naturales desde el año 1980 y encontramos que 8 de los eventos mayores fueron climáticos. 5 de los 8. Bueno, los otros 3 fueron movimientos de tierra. Y entonces eso nos da una idea de qué está pasando y podríamos decir, irse la directora de cambio climático muy a menudo, bueno, de repente esto no se lo podemos endosar completamente todavía al cambio climático, pero están pasando cosas que nos dejan a estas poblaciones desprotegidas. Y los escenarios futuros para nuestro país para el 2080 son que la vertiente Caribe, el 50% las precipitaciones anuales van a incrementarse en un 50%. Mientras que en la zona norte y la región Pacífico se van a reducir en un 65%. No van a tener extremos de inundaciones y sequías en nuestro territorio si las cosas siguen caminando como están caminando. Y esa gran cosa que pudo hacer el país durante muchas décadas de trasvasar aguas del Caribe hacia el Pacífico para realizar regadíos y generar una matriz eléctrica bastante limpia, empiezan a complicarse también con este tipo de cambios, con todos los impactos que tienen a nivel económico, a nivel de infraestructura, a nivel social, y todos los impactos que tiene sin duda a nivel de biodiversidad y natural, ¿no? Proyecciones que se están manejando de aquí al 2025, pérdidas anuales en escenarios conservadores entre el 0.68 y el 1% del Producto Interno Bruto anualmente, y entre el 1.64 y el 2.5 en el escenario más estresado anualmente. Entonces son impactos que si el país no está preparado, sea a nivel de políticas públicas, sea a nivel de resiliencia de su mercado asegurador, son impactos que puede tirar varios años, décadas, el desarrollo de un país, sin duda. Y la senda de reconstrucción y la senda de levantar esa economía se vuelve más compleja. A nivel latinoamericano encontramos brechas de protección importantes, Costa Rica no es la excepción. Los grandes eventos del 70 al 2015 nos reportan que aproximadamente el 80, 85%, en algunos casos el 90, 95% de las pérdidas de esos fenómenos naturales no estaban aseguradas. y los países tampoco tenían esquemas alternativos de hacer pools de riesgos a efecto de soportar también el impacto fiscal. Entonces son números gruesos, son números grandes, que en el caso de Costa Rica, los dos últimos fenómenos hidrometeorológicos nos dicen cosas parecidas, ¿verdad? Huracán Otto, 3.163 millones de colones de pérdidas, 3% aseguradas. Y tormenta Nathan en 17, 18.000 millones de pérdidas, 5,4% de esas pérdidas aseguradas. Entonces, los espacios de penetración y de profundización del mercado son extraordinariamente grandes, pero los retos de esa profundización y de ese cerrar las brechas de protección no deben ser tomadas como simplemente un objetivo en sí. No se trata de vender más seguros, se trata de vender seguros pertinentes, adecuados, accesibles a la población. Datos del estudio de Mafre que se liberó hace escasas semanas, señala que para el caso de Costa Rica, ya para el caso de Latinoamérica, lo estuvimos discutiendo el día de ayer, la brecha de protección es alrededor del 2,25. Eso quiere decir que en nuestro mercado 2,5. Nuestro mercado puede ser 2,5 veces más de lo que es ahorita. Debería estar alrededor de los 4.000 millones de dólares y no de los 1.300 millones de dólares que tenemos. Y ese es el espacio de crecimiento que se tiene localmente para poder cerrar esa brecha de protección según los niveles de desarrollo y crecimiento que hemos tenido. Y las buenas, malas noticias son, bueno, que en no vida, donde la gran mayoría de estos eventos se concentran en coberturas, es un poco menor, es 0,8% esa brecha, pero como vemos, esa brecha está donde más le duele a la gente que menos tiene. Y en el caso de vida, esa brecha, si bien se ha logrado reducir fuertemente, está alrededor del 15%, de 15 veces el mercado actual. Entonces todavía hay mucho que trabajar y mucho que empujar este mercado y estas posibilidades de protección. Un paper muy reciente que complementa o se adelanta al que Jeffrey nos mencionaba hace un momento, nos incorpora también elementos para que el sector, los supervisores, pongamos atención a la hora de abordar estos temas. Y las implicaciones de cambio climático, en realidad podemos resumirlas en 3 dimensiones para las preocupaciones del regulador. La supervisión micro, la sostenibilidad micro de nuestras compañías, donde la estabilidad de solvencia del mercado es crucial. El seguro es un elemento crucial para el desarrollo de un país. En segundo lugar, los esfuerzos de acceso e inclusión que mencionamos hace un momento, con un claro componente y visión de protección al consumidor. Y finalmente, la estabilidad macroprudencial. Sector seguros, sector tradicional de seguros, cuando puede gatillar una crisis financiera, al final de cuentas es cuando falla en responder ante un fenómeno catastrófico. Es uno de los elementos que puede gatillar esa inestabilidad macroprudencial. Entonces allí los esfuerzos supervisores en revisar la gobernanza, la gestión de riesgo, las buenas prácticas de reaseguro, porque son riesgos que no es posible retenerlos en nuestros mercados, pues tienen un acento muy, muy particular y muy especial. Y en esas 3 líneas es que entonces la superintendencia viene trabajando y donde podemos ver, ya Jeffrey lo mencionó con bastante amplitud, cómo se manifiestan estas actividades en principalmente las de suscripción de riesgos y las de inversiones en los riesgos físicos, los riesgos de transición a una economía menos carbonizada y los riesgos de responsabilidades que las compañías enfrentan entonces en sus relaciones contractuales. Hace un año, celebramos hace unas semanas el primer día del seguro sostenible, donde el mercado asegurador costarricense firmó un compromiso con Naciones Unidas a efecto de poder incorporar los esfuerzos necesarios para hacer del mercado de seguros un mercado sostenible. Y este esfuerzo pues va tomando frutos y va incorporando entonces distintos proyectos en la agenda, ¿va? Hay proyectos del lado de seguros agrícolas, hay proyectos del lado de conducta de mercado, de transparencia al mercado. Hace unas semanas tuvimos una reunión muy interesante con el Laboratorio de Innovación del Ministerio, con el ministro Garnier, en relación a buscar opciones para facilitar la ejecución de los contratos de seguros de automóviles. La Asociación de Aseguradoras Privadas está trabajando un esfuerzo importante en ello también, a efecto de que un simple accidente menor no nos estorbe la vida a todos, ¿verdad? Como sucedió en la mañana, que algunos tardaron en llegar acá, ¿verdad? Donde un accidente menor, donde no hay daños, solo hay daños materiales menores generalmente, no impide el tránsito y no genere ese efecto cola y no genere ese montón de contaminación que las congestiones provocan. Y darle más transparencia entonces al asegurado para tener seguridad en su ejecución de contrato. Bueno, son pequeños esfuerzos que se van haciendo, que colaboran en ese proceso de ayudar en este cambio de perspectiva y de paradigma de unas economías carbonizadas. Temas regulatorios, y esto simplemente es para avanzar en los temas que hemos ido conversando. Tenemos en agenda, salió hace unas semanas en el marco de los diálogos climáticos con sectores financieros, la interpretación que se realizó sobre los seguros paramétricos dentro del contexto legal nuestro y cómo son posibles y admisibles en nuestro mercado. Esto es una herramienta interesantísima de inclusión financiera, es una herramienta interesantísima para poder levantar esos eventos, que no solo se venda rápidamente el seguro, sino que se pueda levantar y se pueda indemnizar rápidamente después de un evento y esas comunidades puedan levantarse. Pero tiene, entre paréntesis, una gran responsabilidad también por parte del mercado de hacer productos claros, transparentes, con pocas exclusiones, muy fáciles de cobrar y donde la expectativa que se le da al consumidor no esté aquí cuando el seguro está aquí, ¿no? Porque eso es lo que le genera, es un problema de reputación al mercado. Entonces ahí el mercado, los operadores van a tener que tener mucho cuidado en ese trato justo al cliente y esa transparencia y que ese producto se entienda qué es lo que es y cómo se ejecuta, porque la reputación, al final de cuentas, está en todos nosotros. Es un instrumento extraordinario, fabuloso para penetrar, pero es un instrumento que debemos de sacarlo con la responsabilidad y el acompañamiento necesario. Y allí está la normativa de seguros inclusivos, pronto a salir en consulta. Aquí agradecerle a la iniciativa del acceso al seguro, Regina, que nos acompaña, que nos ha dado un enorme respaldo en este proceso, como lo ha hecho con ya 6 jurisdicciones en el continente que tienen implementadas estas normativas y como lo está haciendo con 9 países más, incluido Costa Rica, la iniciativa de acceso al seguro para sacar estas normativas que permitan ir cerrando esa brecha de protección y dar herramientas adicionales. Que el supervisor no estorbe, que dé las herramientas necesarias para que se dé ese salto, pero también hay una gran responsabilidad del lado de la oferta y el diseño de esos productos. Y finalmente, supervisión de conducta de mercado. Ya este proyecto de inclusión incorpora los elementos más básicos de ello para incorporarle, definirle, transmitir al mercado mayor transparencia y mayor trato justo. Eso es un poco el tema de la agenda regulatoria que tenemos en marcha para enfrentar estos riesgos climáticos que estamos teniendo enfrente, y no quiero pues dejar la oportunidad para agradecerle nuevamente a los panelistas y seguir trabajando por un mercado de seguros más desarrollado, más inclusivo y más apegado a buenas prácticas. Muchísimas gracias por su atención.
Muchísimas gracias, don Tomás, don Jeffrey y don Babak, que estuvieron acá en esta parte inaugural. Vamos a romper un poco el protocolo, damas y caballeros, para avanzar, porque es difícil moverlos a todos y dar la vuelta para hacer una fotografía. En el porte cocher, que está aquí, vamos a pasar la terraza por una puerta que estaba verificando yo acá. Vamos a hacer la fotografía. Sé que en el caminar nos vamos a saludar, vamos a hablar y todo, pero como tenemos una agenda apretada, entonces les voy a pedir el favor de irnos la manera más rápida posible para hacer la foto. Y después regresamos al salón, vamos a dejar esa puerta abierta para aquí, atrás, vamos a tomar el coffee break. A su regreso vamos a colocar unas evaluaciones que le rogamos que a lo largo del día de hoy la puedan ir llenando, que es importantísimo para nosotros tener conocimiento de la riqueza de estas presentaciones, y cada año o cada momento que podamos presentar el seminario, ir enriqueciendo eso que ustedes han dicho en esas evaluaciones, en esos comentarios. Así las cosas, pues a los caballeros pues pedirles el saco para la fotografía, y las damas están bien guapas, así que no hay problema, ¿verdad? Vamos a la fotografía y después al café. Vamos al break. Gracias.
Sunset Clean Edition.
¿Está bien el nivel de audio?
Sunset Clean Edition. Sunset Clean Edition.